Come here, man. You gotta come over here and lay down.
Hi, you've reached Army, Nebraska. Unfortunately, we are unable to come to our phone. If you are in a crisis, you can call our crisis line at 1-800-950-6264, or you can text us at 741-741 24 hours a day. Again, the crisis number is 1-800-950-6264, or you can text us at 741-741 24 hours a day. You may email me at cmeadows@naminebraska.org. Again, that is cmeadows@naminebraska.org. That is the letter C, MEADOW, S as in Sam, at NAMI, which is N as in Nancy, A, N as in Mary, I, Nebraska, spelled out, .org. Or you can leave us a voicemail and we'll get back to you within one business day. Thanks, and make it a great day.
Hello, my name is Sean Schwartz. I've been trying to get an advocate about some legal issues concerning my disabilities and people taking advantage of them, and so I would like you to message me at Dogged Roman, D as in dog, O as in ogre, GG, that's golf, Edward, D as in dog, R as in rancid or Roman, O M like Martin, A N like Nancy. I don't remember what the military designations for those are. That's at gmail.com, or you can call me at, give me a second, it's on the back of my phone, 308. Oh, I guess I should say again, my name is Sean Schwartz. Thank you very much.
Now, when you talk to him, I would suggest that don't bring up any of this legal stuff until you need to talk to them primarily to get a current diagnosis of your illness, and then you need them to.
I have a current diagnosis.
But you your primary thing is you need to have them help you with housing.
Yep, and that's one of the issues with housing is that I've been making these calls for friggin' ever.
Right. But that's those. I mean, you need. I just wouldn't bring up any of the legal things, the harassment, the evidence that you've got about law enforcement. You need to focus right now on your basic need.
And I've been focusing on my basic need. It's not getting anywhere. Part of that is because my previous case manager, her name is Jen Beebe, she wasn't doing her job. My autism advocate was doing her best to do it, but she's all the way in Lincoln. So I ended up having a meltdown over having threats, harassment, and abuse in chapel. And when I had that meltdown, I broke some windows up at low income. So they're not allowing me into low income unless I've had a rental history for at least 2 years, and that is nationwide. Me and Meg have already called on that.
Now, what about a group home type of situation?
Well, that's a possibility. A lot of the problem with that is that I do need to have a support network there. Now, they have one in Scotts Bluff, and that would allow me to be closer to Marcia Estrada and Penny Cooper, because they work primarily out of Scotts Bluff. The problem is getting into that housing. We've filled out the HARP paperwork. We've been denied for several other places, and we were going to go looking for some apartments when she got sick. But a lot of the issues with that is that I needed to be able to have a safe environment where I know somebody. Now, as far as Scotts Bluff goes, meeting people wouldn't be too big of a problem, except that I'm now basically shut in. I'm afraid to go outside. For me, walking from here to Casey's is scary. So I mean, we've explored those options, and we've been filling out the paperwork for that. But while we've been filling out the paperwork, the abuse is still ongoing. The threats and the harassment, the stalking, the police turning a blind eye, and I'm being denied my rights. That's what it all comes down to. And many of these advocacy places, they're not helping with the housing. The situation with my caseworker is that she's supposed to be doing that, and we are filling out the paperwork. We've been filling out the paperwork. We've been going through the process. It's just not going anywhere because of the situation that happened at housing. Meanwhile, I wouldn't have had to do that at housing if it hadn't been for the local sheriff's department going out of their way to ignore all the crimes against me. I got paperwork from them going all the way back to 2018, where one of them, they didn't write any paperwork down at all. Another one, they wrote down a short paragraph, but in that short paragraph they admitted that I was there for over 3 hours. I was trying to turn in crimes that were committed against me by people in chapel, and he was just outright not having it. So the safety issues that are involved, and the fact that these people are using my disabilities as an excuse to deny me my rights as a disabled person and as an intelligent person is the major issue. I've contacted the ACLU, and I've done that 2 or 3 times, but I'll show you their site, because there's a phone number, but the phone number doesn't work. You can't call them through their phone number. You have to go through their website. So then you go to the ACLU website, and this is just for updates on their newsletter here.
Right.
But when you go to get help, it gives you a bunch of stuff that, this all takes time, and it takes up to 2 months for them to get back to you, and they have gotten back to me saying that they basically can't do anything because I'm homeless. I don't have an address to give them. They've got a whole list of different stuff, all of these different numbers that you can call, and I've been through all of them. It says for deaf and hard of hearing advocacy and stuff like that. Obviously I didn't call them, but also because autism is a communication disability. This is one of them that I might need. It's okay, Maddie.
Stop. You're fine.
Much better. All right, Maddie. Much better. She's getting into the safety and security position. It says, for complaints against law enforcement, follow your local law enforcement agency's complaint process. If the issue is not resolved or not resolved to your satisfaction, feel free to contact the ACLU again with documentation about your complaint and the agency's response. But the problem is when you actually go to the site itself, where you are able to, you either have to write it out and send it to them, which obviously without a steady address is, I'm not
Right,
able to do that.
And that's what I mean when I say right now.
I'm aware of that, and that's one of the things with me and Penny doing everything that we've been doing to try to get that going on. But in 5 years of trying, the abuse has continued, but the housing has not happened. When I was able to finally get into housing, I didn't have a caseworker at the time to help me with this stuff. Now the caseworker is supposed to be local, they are supposed to advocate for me, they are supposed to go to the courts with me, this is part of what they advertise. Matter of fact, oh my god, I have the piece of paper over here that shows that. But there's also the fact that while we're doing this, the abuse is still happening.
Define the abuse for me. What is it exactly that they're doing?
Well, it's mostly harassment and threats, but there's also been at least 5 assaults in chapel that the police didn't investigate, despite the fact that I turned in paperwork to them, and also went and made several oral reports, which is legal in the state of Nebraska. Although they keep telling me that I have to write it down, there's several occasions where when I tried to turn it in and asked him if I had to write it down, the officer, his name is Sean Holloway, he told me that wasn't necessary because he had it recorded on his body cam and he could review that, which was also my understanding as far as what the ADA told me. That's the Americans with Disability Act, and I've looked that up quite a few times as well. Alright, so this right here, this is from the Sears house, and they took over for Region 1 because Region 1 was basically shut down in Sydney because they weren't doing their jobs. That has a lot to do with Jen Beebe. There were a lot of people who were unsatisfied with her. They were also intimidated by her on multiple occasions, not just myself. Basically, I had to go through them so that I could try to turn in law enforcement without law enforcement telling me it's not their job. All these places that are supposed to help me that I keep being referred to, when you look it up online, it is literally their job to investigate these things, but then without an advocate, when I call them up, they tell me it's not their job, such as the situation with Scott Costa. They also want me to do this stuff over the internet, and without somebody to help me with the internet stuff, obviously I can look the stuff up, but it doesn't get me anywhere. Nebraska Appleseed has been contacted, the Ombudsman's office has been contacted, Department of Health and Human Services has been contacted, the Disability Rights Advocacy has been contacted. Matter of fact, 4 of these on here have been contacted just this week. Now this is for non-criminal legal services, and like it doesn't make any sense to me that when I call one place and they say, well, is this criminal or civil, it's actually both. See, what they've done is against the law, but they're completely bypassing the criminal portion and forcing me to go directly to the civil portion, which I don't have the mental capacity, nor the computer knowledge, nor the legal knowledge to do all of that. Meanwhile, because I'm broke, I can't get any of this stuff done anyway, because I can't afford a lawyer. Meanwhile, I have contacted lawyers, and so has Meg, my autism advocate, and we have documentation of that, and that is, I was actually on the phone with Meg right before he knocked on my door. Let me find it. This is from Meg. This is supposed to have gone to Sergeant Jones of Nebraska State Patrol, but apparently she wasn't able to send it out. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask her to clarify that, because she said that she hadn't sent anything to them, but she also said that she had, and I get the feeling she sent that, but not the evidence.
Right.
And then this also is
I had already looked at that one.
But, you know, you're absolutely right about the housing first thing, and that's the issue with going all the way back to when Natalie disappeared, is that, you know, I had to make a choice between staying in low income in Nebraska or moving to Ken and Leah's in Inglewood. And the problem with Ken and Leah's, at least I could see my loved ones, and I had some positive interaction with people, because Ken's actually a pretty positive guy. He's just a dick, if that makes any sense. But with me not being able to get housing without somebody there in person to assist me with that, I get blown off every time. That's why the second time that I went through, Meg was my autism advocate, and she was doing what Jen Beebe was supposed to be doing. We've gone through every avenue that we're supposed to. We've done everything that we're supposed to do. I now have a printer, so a lot of the stuff that I write out, I'm able to make copies of now and send them in. But the stuff that was happening prior that I wasn't able to take photocopies of, and I still had to turn it in, like, how do I verify that I turned it in? Meanwhile, I have recordings that show that I turned it in, that you can hear the situation, but it's not a situation where I was able to actually record me physically handing the documents over. You know, it's just a recording of the audio portion. So, I mean, it just, I can't show that I handed them the documents, and with them not turning on their body cameras repeatedly, it makes it extremely complicated.
Do you have the phone number for the Chapel Housing Authority?
I do, but I am not allowed to contact them or go to the Chapel Housing Authority property, and that's another of the issues.
Why can't you contact them?
Because I broke the windows. I have to have somebody else call for me. And like I said, I'm a pretty honest guy. I admit to the things that I do. When it came to breaking those windows, I absolutely did break them. It was a situation where Robert Warnick and Chris Carver both threatened me within like a week's time, or a 2-week period, and I had gone to Dual County Sheriff's Department with reports that were already written out and handed it to them. Now they also kept on, and I have recordings of this as well, they kept on going back and forth between whether or not it had to be on their official parchment or whether I could write it on a regular piece of paper. There's also the situation with other people who wrote handwritten documents, but when I tried to turn it into the police, like, these people kept on asking me, who do I turn it into? But all of these law enforcement agencies were telling me that it's not their job. I didn't know who to turn it into. That's a lot of the reasons most of this stuff is on the internet. I don't have anywhere else to put it, and with the fear of them stealing or destroying evidence again, which has happened on multiple occasions.
No, did you have to pay restitution for the windows that you broke?
No, and I don't mind paying restitution for that. The problem is it never should have gotten that far. Now, instead of investigating the crimes against me, the officer who was sent out wanted to be as intimidating as he possibly could.
Yeah, but somehow we need to steer you away from these crimes against you. and
Well, these
make
crimes,
those secondary to what your real needs are.
the problem is that these crimes against me are cutting me off from those primary needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I understand that, Sean.
The most
I've
important part
studied
is food, water, and shelter.
I've studied yeah.
So shelter.
But here's my concern.
The legal stuff is preventing me from getting into housing. So
It's not the legal things that are preventing you from getting into housing. It's your own personal action of breaking the windows that's keeping you from getting into housing.
I'm aware that I broke the windows, and I'm aware that that is the reason that I'm not being allowed into housing. I'm aware of that, but that's a legal action that needs to be taken for me to be able to get into housing.
Has anyone told you what you can do to rectify that problem?
Yes, but I need help with that. They're supposed to give me a review, and I'm supposed to be allowed basically a meeting with them to show what the situation was. I am allowed that by law, and they never did that. So because they never did that, and because the lady who was denying me my rights at housing, her name was Cindy Taylor, and she has a long history of doing that, by the way, well documented.
I think though that's where you may be getting into a big area of problem.
Very much so.
Is because if you're talking to people, other people, like you're describing it to me, you're automatically putting people on their defenses.
Well, it wasn't starting off with them being on their defenses.
But when you start saying, well, this person has a long history of this, by just saying that, you've already created an adversarial relationship.
But I didn't choose an adversarial relationship.
All
right, let me explain it like this. There's paperwork that I needed from Cindy, and I'm not trying to create an adversarial relationship. I'm trying to get my paperwork from Cindy. Well, she was supposed to give me that paperwork my first week there and never did. There's also the maintenance issues where they weren't doing the maintenance things that needed to be done, and as a result, like my food spoilage in a refrigerator that they knew was broken. They took it out of my neighbor's apartment when they gave her a new fridge because that one was broken. They put the broken one in my apartment and didn't inform me of it, so I lost like $116 worth of food, and my food stamps don't give me $116 a month. It's only $16 a month, so it had been saved up for a while, and prior to getting into housing, it had been more. The problem is that without my caseworker at the time helping me with those things, Cindy was basically just dragging it out as long as she could, and that wasn't a choice that I had made. Now, that issue, in addition to the issue of Dual County Sheriff's Department ignoring the crimes against me and the safety issues with them prior, and me being threatened, harassed, and intimidated by Robert Warnick and Christopher Kurth and a few other people in town that I don't even know, it was very much a safety issue that needed to be rectified. Now, with the adversarial thing that you're talking about, that's an after-the-fact issue. It very much became an adversarial thing because it was like fighting tooth and nail just to get my paperwork from housing, where Jen Beebe, that was supposed to be her job. She was court-ordered to help me with those things. That's the problem with her not doing her job for 6 whole months, is that those things didn't get done. I had to depend on Meg. Meg is a volunteer. She has to work more than one job. She has family issues of her own, health concerns and issues of her own. She's not equipped to do that. And she had explained that to me on multiple occasions. But also there was the ideas that the Dual County Sheriff's Department had in their head about the situation and what Meg is supposed to be doing for me. They thought that Meg's job, that she was getting paid to do what it is that Jen Beebe was court-ordered to do. So with me and Meg, basically for 6 months, I was arguing with her and arguing with the Dual County Sheriff's Department, and I was telling the Dual County Sheriff's Department, hey, you think that this is supposed to be her job? She's telling me that it's not. You guys need to talk to each other. And I kept on telling Meg that too. She's like, well, you know, that's not what I do. And they're telling me, well, this is what she's supposed to be doing. And for 6 months, this argument went on where I'm stuck as the middleman. And I obviously, if we'd have had a 3-way conference call, we could have fixed all of that all in one call. But, you know, now Meg is understanding the extent of the trauma that I've had to go through, because I mean, this is it's horrible. A lot of my communication issues do come from autism, but they also very much come from trauma, and a lot of what I'm experiencing are what's called trauma-induced responses. When you back a rabbit into a corner, even a rabbit will bite you when backed into a corner.
Right, yeah.
And that's where I'm at. I've been backed into a corner for 6 years. I was backed into a corner as soon as I left Virginia. So
I just, Sean, you're fighting a crusade that you're just not going to have any success at.
a lot of people have had success at it, and that's the difference between those people being successful and me not being successful. Is people, you know, saying, oh, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Well, it has worked. It has worked for many people who
And many people have started businesses out of the garage and become millionaires, and hundreds of millions of people have tried the same thing and fall flat on their face. Nothing is guaranteed.
And that's something that I'm well aware of. But if
fighting this crusade though is it's destroying who you are, Sean.
And see, that's what you're missing out on, is that I'm trying to get into housing. All of the things that you're saying that I need to focus on, that is what I'm focused on. That is what my crusade is to get housing.
But all this other stuff is hamstringing you from focusing on the housing stuff, because you're using it all as a reason why you are homeless.
No. See, that's the point with actually looking at the evidence, is that this situation, the safety issues that I face are...
But right now you're not facing any safety. Right now in your present space, you're not facing any life-threatening, any harassing situations right now.
Currently I'm not.
Currently you're not on YouTube reading your YouTube comments?
It's not the YouTube comments that are the issue. The YouTube comments, I can simply... Alright, here's the time out. If somebody is swinging at you, is throwing a punch at you in real life, that's the issue that I'm having. People actually assaulting me in real life, in Chapel, Nebraska, or elsewhere. That was the issue that I was having in Chapel at the time. That's the issue that I was trying to turn.
But nobody's trying to hit you right now.
And I'm aware of that. See, you're not telling me anything that I am so mentally retarded that I can't figure out.
No, I'm not saying that. No, listen to me. Please listen to me.
I have been.
You've got all this evidence, all this information, and the only thing it's going to do is pull you further and further down until...
It's not, though. That's the thing, is that everybody keeps being what do they call them? Debbie Downers. It'll never work, it'll never work, it'll never work.
No, it's not being... In this situation, that's a fact.
And that's exactly the point, is that it is a fact that it is not working, because I do not have support in my corner helping me with this. Now, Meg is doing the best that she can from all the way in Lincoln, and Marcia Estrada, with the best of her understanding, given her time constraints and her ability to go through this, there's a lot of things that I'm having to deal with people's assumptions. Like people's assumptions that the issue is people harassing me online. That's not the issue. The issue is people harassing me in real life over what is online.
Right.
And it's
Either
not,
whether or not they're using the information that's online or whether they're doing it through the internet, it boils down to the same thing. You put yourself out there as a target.
no, I was made a target. Let me show you what the news did, all right? That's the thing, is that people keep saying, well, if you get off the internet, if you get off the internet. But the fact is, this is the stuff that I have to deal with. This is the stuff that people watch. This is the stuff that people in Chapel, Nebraska, where people know me, they're not going to forget this. And they don't forget this. There's also the fact that people see these things, and like this one right here only has 1.8 thousand views. That's not a big problem. I'm not likely to encounter somebody who watched this one in specific. But this one right here has already got 1.2 million views. That means about 1 in 300 people is possibly going to recognize me from this. Now, a lot of those viewers are from other countries, which is a good thing, but there are a lot of these. There's quite a few of them. And
Right, but
the people in Chapel, Nebraska, their motives for committing the crimes against me is the slander that's on these sites, the slander that I was never allowed to defend myself against. So when I was able to get housing in Chapel, I hardly ever left my housing. I stayed in housing. I had to deal with people screaming out the window and stuff in real life, and that doesn't
but
hurt me.
here's the reality, Sean.
I'm very well grounded in reality, but go ahead.
Millions of people every day are being slandered on the internet, and
Yes.
they just walk away from it.
You don't get to walk away from people assaulting you in real life over it. That's the point. People assault me in real life over
But
it.
nobody's as right.
I get that nobody is assaulting me right this moment, but the fact is that anywhere I go, that is a possibility, and in most cases, a probability.
But that applies to everybody. That applies to me, Sean. That applies to the owner of the motel.
The problem is that in that situation, when you are called mentally ill, you have to have somebody there, or you get blown off by all of these services.
Right, but all I'm saying is that you're fighting something that you don't need to be fighting.
And that's your opinion. It's not based on fact.
No, it is based on fact.
People assaulting me, it is a fact. People not assaulting me right this very moment doesn't mean that it doesn't happen often and frequently.
But people get assaulted. People get slandered. People
I'm
get libeled
aware of
against.
this, but it's also against.
No, Sean, you're fighting something that.
I'm fighting to be able to defend myself against these people, to be able to turn.
And you
them
made it your life crusade to go against everyone that's spoken anything against you on the internet.
That's not it. That's not it at all. See, you are going out of your way at this point to avoid the real issue.
No, I'm not avoiding
the
anything.
The real issue is the threats, the harassment, and the assaults against me in real life. Not that people are harassing me on the internet. People are not punching me on the internet. People are not punching me on the internet. Robert Warnick did not assault me on the internet. He assaulted me because of the situation with Natalie Bollinger and the popularity situation. Many people hate me because of the slander that's on the internet. And I can't do anything about the slander that's on the internet except try to show the truth. Now, the problem with that is they keep using the mentally ill tag to deny me my rights to defend myself. I was assaulted by Robert Warnick, and I'm the one who got locked up. I'm the one who was assaulted by Scott DaCosta, and I was the one who was locked up. I was the one who was assaulted by Derek Apodaca. I was the one who was assaulted by Waylon Lolatai. I was the one assaulted in all of these cases, and they got away with it by calling me mentally ill. I cannot defend myself. My crusade is to get the rights that I am supposed to have. I am supposed to be able to turn in crimes against me. And I'm prevented from doing that. And then there's the sheer quantity of crimes that have been committed against me. The stuff on the internet harassment is not a major issue. But it does show the mentality of the people that I'm having to deal with in real life. A lot of these people who watch this, chances are pretty good that they watched it for entertainment, but they watched so many of these that they forgot about it a couple of months after she was gone. You know, they completely forgot about it. But in the places where I have familiarity, where I had a support network, places like Boulder, Colorado, and Chapel, Nebraska, I can't go because those people who know me, they're going to remember for the rest of their lives that they saw me on the news. And in a small town, we'll talk about that, and it's a very big thing. For me, repeatedly being forced into homelessness, I've had to take a lot of abuse. When I was finally able to get into housing, I was in housing in Chapel, Nebraska. That was the only place I was able to find housing, and I was glad to have that housing. The problem is that despite me having housing, that didn't stop any of the threats, harassment, or assaults in Chapel. People keep saying I need to move on, I need to move on, I need to move on. Where do I move on to?
You could move on, but here's what I see as a big problem. You bring all this stuff with you no matter
See,
where
now
you
you're
are.
victim shaming and victim blaming, and that is not okay.
See, there's one of your problems right there. I'm not doing any of that.
You're telling me I bring it on myself. That is like telling a battered woman that
No, it's not.
she was asking
You
for it.
this
That's
started
like telling
no.
a woman who was
What I'm
wearing
saying,
t-shirt
Sean,
with
is
skirt
this
that she was
started in
asking to be
Virginia.
raped. That's right, and it continued when I left Virginia. When I left Virginia, that
Can't
should
you
have
see
been
that
it.
there's a pattern? Every place you go, this is following you because you make it an issue wherever you go.
When people are threatening, harassing, and assaulting me, that is an issue. When I am prevented from seeing my loved ones or going in to get help, that is an issue. When I left Virginia, I blocked Natalie, I blocked Alicia, I blocked Maddie, and that was the end of it for me. I left.
That's ancient history. But what I'm saying is, every place that you go, whether it's in Seattle, the root of the problem is that because of having the autism and the PTSD, you bring this stuff with you.
No, I didn't bring it with me. That's the thing. When I left Virginia, I went to Boulder. All right? The rumors followed me to Boulder. They were already in Boulder by the time I got to Boulder. It only took me 3.5 days to drive from Virginia back to Boulder. When I got back to Boulder, I had to deal with people. I might puke. When I got back to Boulder, I had to deal already with people assaulting me and threatening me. The day that I got back to Boulder, I left the situation followed me, the rumors followed me. And as a result, I tried to get housing. I was able to get housing in Chapel, Nebraska. And Chapel, Nebraska sucked. I was also told by all of these different services that are supposed to help disabled people that this all has pretty much nothing to do with Natalie. It has to do with getting services that actually help out people like me, so that I could get assistance, so that I would have rights, so that if people do assault me or threaten me, I actually have some legal recourse other than them blowing me off by calling me mentally ill. Now, with those places in Colorado along the Front Range, I had to be in Colorado along the Front Range. So the people that I moved in with, Ken Wilson and Leah Plunkett, I was living with them in their garage, and I was paying rent both in Chapel because I was trying to improve my credit score. I had to fulfill the full year-long lease, and I was actually physically living at Ken and Leah's. Now, physically living at Ken and Leah's was a big hassle because they were drug dealers, but at least I could see some of my friends and I could see positive people. Now, the issue with me going through all of the diagnosis process and going through all of that is because I was being denied my right to turn in the people who were repeatedly harassing me and repeatedly threatening me, and I couldn't go see my loved ones. I couldn't go see my older brother in Boulder. You know, this is very much an issue with me not being able to have the connection with people who are my connection. I mean, this is my older brother. Rumors that were started in Virginia over something that didn't even happen, you know, that should not have prevented me from seeing my older brother. Now, with the housing in Chapel, I had to make a choice between either living in Chapel housing once my lease was over, and it was over, I had a choice between either living there or living at Ken and Leah's, because Ken and Leah kept on raising the rent on me. And it wasn't like I felt that it was completely unreasonable. I was paying them $275 a month to stay there. But then Leah wanted a lot more from me, and when I had moved and I had to make the choice between Chapel, Nebraska, or being along the Front Range where those services are, I chose to be on the Front Range where those services are. And I was working through the Colorado Coalition Homeless and the Stout Street Clinic. The two people that I was working with in specific were Jeff Ritter and Kara Heller. Now, we were working on trying to get me housing in Colorado, but it's a lot more difficult to get housing in Colorado. Meanwhile, since I no longer had a place to live in Chapel, Ken and Leah realized that, I don't have anywhere else to go, and at that point they started victimizing me as much as possible. So I was trying to go through Jeff Ritter to say, hey, I'm being ripped off, they're taking my disability money, and they were supposed to provide goods and services, and they're not. They're spending my money on weed and drugs and whatever the hell that they want to. I'm having to go without food right now because all of my money is already gone to Ken and Leah. They were supposed to pay me back on the 8th of December of 2018, and it became a very complicated situation. There's also the fact that I did continually have people that were threatening me and assaulting me whenever I would go back to Boulder to try to see my loved ones. Now, I rescued people in Boulder for a lot of years. I kept people safe in Boulder for a lot of years. That was my support network. Now, for somebody who is autistic, it is important to have a support network. I don't have one. Meg is the closest that I have, and with her, and she wasn't a part of this until 2020. Like, prior to that, she didn't even know I existed. Now, a lot of the problem that I have had to deal with in Chapel since Natalie's death, the whole situation with Natalie dying, is I was sick and tired of people threatening, harassing, and assaulting me. Meanwhile, I was in an unsafe situation at Ken and Leah's, and I had nowhere else to go, and I had a meltdown. I mean, there was nothing I could do to stop it. Now, I didn't need for Natalie to come touch my penis like people want to pretend. What I needed was for the threats, harassment, and assaults to be put an end to. But whenever I went to police, I was blown off. And that's the whole reason that I was going through this whole legal process, is because when you're called mentally ill, people can do whatever they want to you. They automatically win because you're called mentally ill. That's the whole reason for me jumping through all of these hoops, is because I am easy to victimize. I am in a very desperate situation and have been for the majority of my adult life. And I was told that by jumping through these hoops that I could actually take legal action, that the police would have to do something about the assaults that I was enduring, and the fact that in the future I will also have to endure it unless I'm able to get all of these things, all these ducks lined up in a row. Meanwhile, the situation with Ken and Leah stealing my things and stealing my money prevented me from lining those ducks in a row. Jeff Ritter, through the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless, I was working with him to try to get a lawyer to actually get a stop put to the victimization, because, I'm an at-risk adult. What these people are doing is felonious, and, they're using the mentally ill tag to prevent me from turning in the things that need to be turned in. That's why you need a caseworker. That's why you need someone like Kara Heller. That's why you need someone like Penny Cooper or Jen Beebe. Or Tamara. Tamara is the only one who is actually helping, but she quit her job all the way back in 2017. So since 2017, I haven't had an effective caseworker. They want to tell me how to think and how to feel with no regard for the actual situation. What I'm trying to do is get it so that these assaults that I have to endure, because anybody can assault me at any point in time, call me mentally ill, and get away with it. They call me mentally ill, and magically whatever crimes they have committed against me no longer exist. When Natalie was killed, I was still going through that process. I had already gotten my disability, but I was going through the process of trying to get some sort of advocacy to defend me, and that's what Kara Heller was supposed to do. And then there was a lady named Ashley who was supposed to be my caseworker in Nebraska, and the situation with Ashley is that she wasn't able to come on for another month, and during this time I'm getting threatened and harassed by one of Natalie's ex-boyfriends who's threatening to kill my family, and it's very much, that becomes a very serious situation, especially when this man has a history of violence against Natalie as well as others. And you know, he has threatened multiple people with knives, likes to send them pictures of his knives and pictures of his guns, and you know, it became a very serious situation. With the assaults and with these people being drug addicts and being volatile, it was a very scary situation for me, and it was one that I had walked away from. When I left Virginia, that should have been the end of it. But then, when I went to Boulder, obviously it wasn't. So when I left Boulder and I went to Chapel, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Now, since Natalie and Maddie and all them didn't know anybody in Chapel, that situation with them was not as big of a deal as it was in Boulder. But there's also the fact that I was completely cut off from a support network. Now, with the situation that was going on in Chapel, I was finally able to get my autism, or not my autism advocate, but I was able to get in contact with Region 1 because of being called in on suicide watch. Meanwhile, I wasn't attempting suicide. What I was attempting to do was get help, and everybody kept blowing me off as if I have the same rights as everyone else. And I may have the same rights on paper as everyone else, but they're not observed the same as everyone else. If it's illegal to commit this crime against you, and it's also against the law to commit this crime against me, if you're not called mentally ill, you're more likely to be heard than I am. And that's the reason for needing, again, somebody like Jen Beebe, or somebody like Tamara, or someone like Penny Cooper, or someone like Kara Heller, or that Ashley, it might have been Amy, I don't know, I don't have that phone anymore. But that's the thing about having basically a guardian for when crimes are committed against me, so that I can turn them into the police without being blown off, without them assuming that just because they can't see my disabilities that they don't exist. There's also the fact that homelessness plays a part. And when Natalie was killed, I was forced into homelessness. The people who had taken advantage of me that I was trying to take to court used that as an excuse, and used that to basically try to justify the crimes they committed or pretend that they didn't happen at all. And of course, since it was all over the news, nobody wants to associate their name with me anyway. So I'm in a big giant hornet's nest, and with getting housing, when I was finally able to get it in Chapel after Natalie was killed, and I was staying there in Chapel after Natalie was killed, I still needed that person to advocate for me when crimes were being committed, especially with Dual County Sheriff's Department at that point, trying to avoid the fact that I had gone to them previously about the issue, not just the issue with, you know, housing, but also the issue with people threatening and harassing me across the internet that were actual dangerous people. Some crazy lunatic in Australia telling me that he's gonna come pop me in the lip, I don't care, I can block that dude on the internet. Tim Beeson, living in Colorado, and Chapel, Nebraska being a small town, I mean, it's easy to find me, it's easy to locate me, it's easy for him to actually come up here and harm my family. At that point, I was sick of this. At that point, people had actually pursued me already across state borders to threaten me. People had already been, Natalie had given out my phone number to people who were calling me up and telling me that I need to do this and I need to do that, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and obviously somebody gave them my phone number. So the situation was that I couldn't do anything to defend myself. Law enforcement wasn't doing anything to defend myself, and being in Chapel Housing Authority, not once but on 2 separate occasions. The first time I was there, I rented the place for a whole year, although I wasn't there most of that time. The second time was after Natalie's death, and in both occasions I was being threatened by Tim Beeson. And there's also the repeated harassing phone calls and cops telling me that they couldn't do anything about it, they had real police work to do, or even telling me that these things were not against the law.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Sean.
I blocked like 6 phone numbers.
But sometimes you just need to walk away from those type of situations. You just need
I did. That's the thing, is that I walked away. I didn't give Tim Beeson or these other people that were threatening and harassing me, I didn't give them my phone numbers. Somebody else had given it to them. You know, these people, it's not like it's going to be a difficult thing for them to find me in Chapel, Nebraska and come harm me. It's not like it's difficult to find my family and go harm them if they're local. And, you know, for me...
But here's how anyone's going to look at you. You put all this on the internet. You're going after multiple law enforcement jurisdictions.
That's because I was forced into multiple law enforcement jurisdictions. When I tried to turn in the Dual County Sheriff's Department, they utilized multiple jurisdictions.
But when you're posting that this specific police department isn't doing anything but just exasperating the problem, you're on the internet, you're making things worse for you.
And see, that's the whole problem, is that I'm speaking out about the abuse that I'm
But you're making it worse. You're causing, you're opening up more.
Though.
No, it's not, Sean.
Saying that I'm
no, it's not.
choosing to be
No, it's
I'm
not.
choosing to speak out.
Yeah, and people that choose to speak out, you're causing the problem.
No, this is causing the problem right here.
Sean,
this is causing the problem right here.
When
this
you
is
go on the
this man right here is one of my predators. This is
Sean,
Natalie's dad.
Sean, listen, why don't you, if you want help, listen.
I have
when
been
you,
listening.
When you put stuff on YouTube, make YouTube videos about how this police department is doing this and not doing that, they're all this, you're creating more of a problem for you.
And that is the issue right there, is that people are blaming me for defending myself, blaming me as if I deserve to be victimized because
I'm not saying that
you
you deserve to be victimized, Sean, but it is an apparent fact that when you're posting what you're posting on YouTube, you're opening a door for your problems to arise.
That's like saying a woman who wears a miniskirt is opening the doors to get raped.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, it's nothing like that.
It's absolutely
no,
like
it's
that.
Sean. No, it's not.
This guy right here, the officer who assaulted me right after Natalie was killed, his name is Waylon Lolatai. $95,000 settlement. This man, Sammy Leon Lawrence IV, was doing the same thing that I was. He was showing the harm that is done by the Boulder Police Department, the way that they harass the homeless, and this is done nationwide. This is another one with him. This is one with a woman named Kelly Clark.
But what I'm saying, Sean, is when you make the decision to engage in battle with these people, you're opening up the door for war.
But
and now you're in a position.
I didn't engage in war.
Yeah.
They chose the war. I declared it.
And that's causing your problems right now.
No, it's not. When you are being assaulted, when somebody is assaulted.
But when you're bringing it to light on YouTube and you're accusing people, why is that any different than someone accusing you of being schizophrenic? You're accusing me.
Because I have evidence. Because I have evidence.
But what type of evidence?
Actual physical evidence, evidence both online and in real life. See, let me show you.
I don't need to see the video, Sean. What I'm saying.
It's not seeing the video, it's seeing a phone. See this phone right here? This is the phone that I had when Robert Bornick assaulted me. You know why it's broken like that?
But that's not evidence.
It is evidence. On this phone is recorded the assault against me. Robert Warnick had repeatedly threatened to kill me and threatened to assault me on multiple occasions before that situation arose.
What I'm trying to say to you is that by doing a lot of what you're doing, you are helping to exacerbate a problem that's keeping you from housing. It's keeping you from being able to support yourself.
The assaults that I'm enduring over the Natalie Bollinger situation,
But see,
I did not choose for
but
people
here's
to
the thing,
target me over it.
that's the thing, Sean. Until you are willing to just, you're never going to be able to live.
And see, you're not providing me with any actual help by saying that. You are avoiding the situation.
No,
of
I'm
people
not,
assaulting
Sean.
me.
No, I'm not.
When I was in housing in Chapel, Nebraska after Natalie died, all right? You think that just because I was up in housing up there, that people in town were not continuing to threaten and harass me?
Why were they threatening and harassing you?
Over Natalie Bollinger being killed.
By posting videos?
No, see, there you go, going out of your way to miss the point. No, when Natalie Bollinger disappeared,
All I'm
it
saying,
was all over the news.
Sean,
And hold up, time out.
No, no.
See, that's the thing, is that in Chapel, Nebraska, we get Denver News in Chapel, Nebraska. We get Denver News all the way here in North Platte. It's Denver News. Everybody that I knew in Chapel, Nebraska knew about the situation with Natalie, and all they heard was the slander side. My side was never told. Alright, so now I have to deal with people in town like Robert Warnick and Christopher Kurth who stalk me because they saw something on the news that was not true. Then there's the popularity of these web sleuth groups, and there's the fact that many people in Chapel, after watching that, because I was always the weird kid in Chapel, alright, if you didn't grow up in the small town from kindergarten, you're just not going to be accepted by the town. Now, I accepted that at a very young age, alright? I moved to Chapel when I was 15, and when I was 15, I accepted that since everybody wants to blame everything on blacks and Mexicans, and there aren't any blacks and Mexicans there, that me and the people in that town were not going to see eye to eye. I accepted that. But the situation after Natalie was killed is that that's the only place that I could get housing. So then these people who continue to pull these BS because they want to pretend like I might hurt their kids. I don't have a history of hurting kids. I have a history of protecting kids.
But you can't, but you're trying to fight against something that people have been fighting against for hundreds of years with very little success on overcoming prejudice and perceived ideas about people. Because it's not just about, it's not just you. People,
I'm aware that it's not just me.
But here's the thing, I don't know, Sean. I don't know. I just, no one's going to be able to help you because you have taken it upon yourself for this to be a lifelong crusade mission. And you're not willing to listen to others people's advice. You just want someone.
I don't need advice.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that when it comes to advice, if people are telling me, oh, you just need to move on.
Everybody needs advice.
If I'm continuing to take the assaults, something needs to be done about it. When I had to move out of
Everybody
Nebraska
needs advice.
because
Anyone that says advice, they're just speaking arrogance and hubris. Everybody in life needs advice.
and advice that is unwarranted or uneducated is not well founded. If somebody
But
tells
see, that's
me,
your opinion of whether or not it's uneducated.
someone telling me to let it go, all right? Let's say I let go the first assault that I endure in Chapel.
Okay, so what are you going to do that's going to change any of this?
I'm trying to get an advocate so that all right, the legal process that I have to go through so that I can turn these people in and have an advocate help me to do that.
But see,
That's
there's a
what I'm
problem.
doing.
You're focused on turning people in. You should be focused on housing and food.
And see, there you are. I was focused on housing and food.
No, all you're doing is
time out. I had housing and food. I had housing and
all
food.
you're
You
doing-
are missing out on that. I had housing and food. I had housing and food.
And because of you reacting to...
reacting to being assaulted, even though I had housing and
How
food.
is throwing the window through a window of your own apartment responding sensibly to an act of harassment.
It's not an act of harassment, it is an assault. That's the thing.
What did they do to assault you?
Oh my God. Well, for starters, smacking me with beer bottles when I was walking down the street. I can't just live in my apartment. I have to go to the grocery store eventually. I have to go to the post office.
But the fact is, you don't have housing because someone harassed or abused or assaulted you. You don't have housing available to
I
you.
am aware of why I don't have housing. What I'm saying is that it shouldn't have gotten to the point where that was my last ditch option.
But why would that be an option
See,
to throw what to? No,
Because
no, that's
going-
and
because
anybody
going
would
to the
ask you
top-
that.
because-
That's a reasonable
and
question.
See, now you're not allowing me to answer. I really
Come on,
need you
Maddie.
to step out of my room.
Come on, man. You're going to have a hard time getting anyone to help you, because
Especially
you're
when
not
they won't
willing
listen.
to be helped.
No, I'm trying to get help.
But you're
I'm
no,
jumping through all the hoops that I was.
No, all you're trying to do.
We both need a breather.
Come
We
on,
both
man.
need a breather. Dear Jesus. That's the problem with messing with the timeline and people having their own assumptions. Their own assumptions of the timeline and the events in which they happened, and wanting to argue because they want their opinions to be more important than the facts. It's completely batshit bonkers. If I've got housing, and I've already got the food, and I've already got the roof over my head, then I've got what I need, right? Or I should, rather, right? But then when somebody assaults me, I can't turn it in. I can't turn it in. The cops are not going to listen to me. So I've got this housing in this place that, well, even though I have housing and I have food, I have to deal with the assaults and the threats and having to not be able to leave my apartment without having to look over my shoulder for some Nebraska asshole going to pull something stupid. People seem to think that if I ignore beer bottles being thrown at me and continue to ignore it, that's a big issue. With many of these situations, the people who are threatening me and the people who are assaulting me, I didn't know their names. I didn't know how I was going to be able to turn them in without their names, and even the ones whose names that I did know, I wasn't allowed to turn in. I mean, Chris Kurth, I knew who he was, and they still wouldn't let me turn him in. And the situation with Robert Warnick, I knew who he was, and they still wouldn't let me turn it in. It's not that I didn't try. Now, with me losing my housing, yes, I broke the window, because I was still being threatened and harassed just for walking down the street, just for walking to see my friends. Now, once I got a vehicle, I didn't have to deal with that as much, but I didn't get a vehicle until I got out of prison last year. And trying to explain that to somebody who's got their own ideas of what letting it go really entails. What does letting it go mean? What does it mean? Literally, explain it to me. What does letting it go mean?